He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That was Photoshopped, Terry. You can't do that. Do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshopped?
Apparently, our president doesn't know what Photoshop is, so... Hello, my name is Liz Ashley, and welcome to my channel. Today, we are going to be talking about Trump and some interviews. So we're going to talk about Trump and some interviews where he just is bonkers. Where he is just bonkers. So recently, I actually posted something about Tim Pool, and a lot of people... But I got a lot of hate comments, okay? And something that I criticized Tim for was his question at the White House press pool. And also someone said that like these are one-offs, these influencers, which some of them are one-offs, but the Steve Bannon and Mike Lindell people like are a part of that. They are like White House correspondents. So just putting that out there. He talked about how all the mainstream media was calling Abrego Garcia a Maryland man and how that was a hoax. And he's talked about this on his podcast. He actually had someone on his podcast who pushed back on him. But I criticized him for that question. And the reason that I criticized him and just said, oh, it was a dumb question, is because I don't think Tim Pool should be taken seriously, personally. But I'll explain to you in this video, going along with Trump and his response to some questions about Abrego Garcia, how this is not a hoax. It's not a hoax to call him a Maryland man. Also, calling that a hoax is not getting to the root of the problem or the root of the issue at all. Let's get into it. Sorry, I just felt like I wanted to address it. Trump has been having these interviews lately that have not been great. But he was having this interview with Terry, I don't know his last name, but he was having this interview with him. So he asked him about Abrego Garcia because the Supreme Court told him that it was a 9-0 decision, told him that he needed to facilitate the release of Abrego Garcia from El Salvador.
And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him facilitate his return to the United States.
Now, this is something that Stephen Miller says that the Supreme Court sided with Trump on. So I don't think Trump is even getting the full or honest truth about what's going on at all. I think Stephen Miller is the one doing a lot of this.
What was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0.
In our favor.
In our favor.
And Abrego Garcia is a Maryland man, okay? He has a family in Maryland. He is a union member in Maryland. He lives in Maryland. He has lived in Maryland for a very long time. He is a Maryland man, okay? That is who he is. Tim seems to think that is a hoax because he was born in El Salvador, but there was a order that he was not to get, if he were ever to get deported or whatever, that he would not go back to El Salvador because it is dangerous for him there.
Who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake.
And so he has lived his life in Maryland. He is a Maryland man. And even on Tim Pool's podcast, one of his co-hosts even pushed back and was like, well, if I moved to Florida, they would say Florida man. All of these people in these Florida man stories, probably not all of them were born there.
This is a Tim Pool talking with Ian about the Maryland man hoax. Basically, he was in the White House press briefing and asked about the Maryland man hoax. And people are saying, what are you talking about, the Maryland man hoax?
Poor timing for Tim to come out with this on the day that Donald Trump was going to. He's got MS-13 on the picture of his hand.
Look at what happened with the Covington kids. And we're going back years, but now the Maryland man hoax.
I got to talk about that. Okay, if I see both sides of this Maryland man thing. If I moved to California and some shit went down.
Ian, where are you from?
Ohio, but I'm from Maryland because I
No,
live
you're
in
not.
Maryland.
You're not from Maryland.
If someone asked me, where are you from? If I was in Germany and they're like, where are you from? I'd say Maryland.
No, you wouldn't.
Because that's where I came from.
That's not true.
Because I moved around so much, I would tell people I'm from LA when I lived in LA. When they would ask, where are you from? I'm from LA. I've been there 7 years.
You are one of the rare people who does that.
If I went to California and there was an article written and something happened and they were like, California man, something, something. Yeah, that's the meme. You can move to Florida. You're a Florida man. No. Dave, what's his name? Does
No,
that?
no.
So this is just for people who don't understand why they're doing this. This is because Kilmar Abrego Garcia is described as a Maryland man because he, has a family there and a job. Well, he's been there since he's a teenager.
And Tim was like, no, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Is it ridiculous? Is it ridiculous? Or are you just trying to come up with some silly disagreement on whether to call him a Maryland man or not, where that's not even the root of this problem. The root of this problem is that he was not supposed to go to El Salvador. The court said that he was not to be taken back to El Salvador. And not only was he taken back to El Salvador, he was put in a prison camp where people do not get out of, or not even just being deported. And I think that's what a lot of people are not understanding about this. Not even just being deported, because just being deported is being taken somewhere and then you live a free life. He was taken to a literal prison where they torture people and they shaved their heads. So no, actually, it was a crazy thing to ask. It was a crazy thing to ask Caroline Leavitt in that press briefing, because that's not a hoax. And it doesn't matter about if you disagree, if you want to call him a Maryland man or not. He should not have been taken to El Salvador. The Supreme Court said as much, and they're not even listening. And now the Trump administration and trying to say, well, they said facilitating. Can we do it? I don't know.
As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
All right, what are the facts here?
There are a bunch of issues with Mr. Miller's description of that ruling. I encourage people to read it for themselves. It's pretty short. Miller did not mention that the ruling said the Trump administration has to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Court explicitly said they have to facilitate him getting out of jail in El Salvador. Now, the administration is arguing, as you guys have talked about, that the order to facilitate doesn't mean they actually have to do anything at all. It's not what the plain language of that Supreme Court ruling says. The Supreme Court also wrote, quote, that the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps.
So then Trump asked in that interview, can't you just bring him back? Isn't that what the Supreme Court said to do? And Trump said, yeah, I can, but I'm not going to.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has ordered you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't.
So Trump admitted that he could bring him back. Trump admitted that. And so again, all of these lies about, oh, well, it's El Salvador, they have to do it. Oh, well, the Supreme Court said that it was on my side. No, you can bring him back, and they told you to bring him back, and you're not doing it. You're blatantly disregarding them, and no one seems to be there. Well, there's a small few people who seem to be doing anything about it, but Hakeem Jeffries wants people to stop going to El Salvador. So, even though Abrego Garcia is not the only person in El Salvador, there are many other people who are there who are not gang members, who are not criminals, and it doesn't matter if they were, because if they were, they deserve due process. That is the problem. The problem is not getting due process. If one person doesn't have due process, neither do you. If one person, I don't care who they are, if there's a single person in this country that doesn't get due process, then neither will you. Neither will you, okay? And they're talking about habeas corpus.
The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at.
So this is serious and this is real. And that's the question that should have been asked instead of, is it a hoax to call him a Maryland man? And that's why I didn't take that question seriously, because it's a silly question that has no legitimacy, that is stupid to ask while people literally do not have due process. But something else that happened within that interview was Trump was saying that Abrego Garcia is from MS-13. That is also something that Tim said, but saying that he is from MS-13 because he had MS-13 on his knuckles.
He said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles
didn't say-
tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that.
Now, I remember when this picture came out and everyone was like, oh, see, look, it says MS-13 on his knuckles. That Photoshop was not there to say, oh, it's supposed to be MS-13. That Photoshop was there to say, oh, his knuckle tattoos he has knuckle tattoos. How scary. He must be in a gang. That's exactly what that is. It was trying to be an interpretation of his knuckle tattoos. Now, Donald Trump thinks that was real. He thinks that was real. He thinks it's a real freaking tattoo, even though it doesn't even look like it, even though it's obviously photoshopped. And everyone's been trying to spin it like, oh no, he doesn't really mean that. Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Hey, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
and you think it
agree
was
to disagree.
Photoshop? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had
Fair enough.
MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine,
No,
sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're there
in
now.
your picture.
Terry,
Ukraine, sir.
he's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
And then when he got pushback, he was like, why can't you just agree with me? Why can't you just agree with my absurd lie that is not true, that is obviously not true? Why can't you just agree with me because I want to be the king, because I want to be like a freaking dictator?
Why don't you just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested.
I also wanted to address like the Tim Pool thing. I don't know why. I was just kind of like, okay, maybe I didn't address his question seriously because I don't want to take him serious, because I don't think Tim Pool is a serious person. Personally, but I do want to address the Abrego Garcia situation, and I was going to do that in this video anyway. That's the end of me talking about that, because all these people wanted to be in my comments about, oh, Tim Pool's so smart. Okay, he's not. Please stop. Like, please stop. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me what you think below, and comment, like, subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, so if you could help me, that would be amazing. Yeah, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.